Everyone, I'd like to call the meeting to order. We'll start with a pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. I'll have the clerk please call the roll.
Supervisor Fountain?
Here.
Treasurer Horning?
Here.
Clerk Chofiu? Here. Trustee Collier? Here. Trustee Germain?
Here.
Trustee Harper? Here. Trustee Petrucci?
Here. Thank you. Item number 3 is approval of our meeting agenda.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Treasurer Horning, second by Trustee Harper. Any discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Item number 4 is call to the public. There will be an opportunity for the agenda item later on, but if you have something that's not on the agenda this evening.
I do.
Good evening.
Good evening. Gary Corneo, 2558.
Hey, Gary, could you just... Thank you very much.
All right. It's a little aggressive coming at me here. 2558 Cedar Lane Court. And as I think you all know, my wife and I own the building at the northeast corner of Krause and Avon. And I'm here tonight to comment about the upcoming road work on Avon Street. It's come to my attention that the work that is going to be done is not going to follow the village plan that was prepared several years ago, and myself and other citizens, volunteers, were involved in that. I was very disappointed to hear that. That's my understanding, and my understanding is not correct, and I apologize, but I'll try not to make any misstatements here. I have enough of those these days. I was disappointed to hear that the work was not going to involve basically the curb and gutter along Avon Street, which is part of the village plan, and the parking spaces, that it's only to include paving, as I understand it, with the hope or the thought that that work would be done later, which frankly is not very likely to happen, in my opinion. And I have a couple of items. I participated in the village plan group. I also participated in the roads and pathways group as a citizen asked to volunteer. Spent a lot of time in that. The roads and villages, or the roads and pathways, frankly, I was disappointed when pathways, sidewalks were removed from that. I believe Joe and Glenn, you were on that committee. There was discussion that the township would follow up with work on the sidewalks, which indeed you did with some of the work that was done in the village. I recall that I came in and actually thanked you for that effort. Today I'm here to ask you to continue that effort as a property owner and as a citizen and as an architect. I believe that's the right thing to do, is to do it correctly. We've already had Avon Street, as I think you all know, tied up with the sewer work. I had 2 piles of gravel taller than my building out in front of the building for a significant period of time. Understand that there will be inconvenience with the road work, which is to be expected. Do not believe that there should then be a plan to have a third time to come back and do the rest of the job. It's just not the right way to do it, in my opinion. And I know most of the folks are here tonight about an issue where you're going to perhaps incentivize a property owner or try to help a property owner with the development of their property. What I'm requesting is that you help incentivize the property owners that have been here a while in the village And I'm also not going to dwell on this, but I would have liked this change in plans communicated to me. You know, I volunteered a lot of time in this, and I had to find out it by asking questions, and I'm a little disappointed in that, but I'm a big boy. I've been disappointed before. I'll be disappointed in the future. But I would like you to reconsider your approach to that, and in the interest of incentivizing, I'm willing, my wife and I are willing to contribute $5,000 the cost to do the work in front of our building, whether it's done or not, to the rest of the village, just to do things right. I think most of you know I tried to do that with my building. I spent the money, put my money where my mouth was. I'd like the township, I guess, to do a little more of that, but I'm willing to ante up, and if it's only my curb and gutter, then it's only my curb and gutter, but at least demonstrates how it can be done properly. So anyway, I wanted to put that forth to all of you at the same time. Appreciate the consideration. I think it's a very important part of the community, and believe that it is worth a full effort and not just a partial effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else this evening at the first call to the public? Mr. Kuhn? Again, if we could keep this to things that are not part of the public hearing, that'd be great. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Doug Kuhn, 12858 Reed Road. I just would like to call your attention to a couple things. Memorial Day is coming up here. We've been up putting flags in the cemeteries. The condition of the cemetery in Parshallville is pretty bad. It needs cleaning, it needs mowing, it needs brushing. Right at the entrance it's okay, but when you get back in the cemetery it's pretty bad shape. Also at Hodge Cemetery there's a huge old maple tree that appears to have died over the winter. It's a big sucker. It's going to be quite a project getting that down, but that will have to be handled outside of normal maintenance type issues. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else this evening that call the public? Being none, we'll move on to our public hearing. What we're going to do is Manager Wickman is going to start the process of kind of how we got to where we are this evening with a public hearing, the process that we went through, and all the different action items that we've gone through to this point, and then along with how it would proceed after this evening. And then what I'm going to do is ask the board to open the public hearing. Then we'll have 3 minutes per person. Please come up to the podium. State whatever you'd like to state pertaining to this, and then we'll go from there, and the board will have an opportunity to have their input as well. So with that, Manager Wickman, could you please kind of open us up as to where we are in this process? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'll attempt to summarize for the benefit of the public and for the board kind of the different steps and the different talking, the discussions that have taken place to get to this point. There are a number of moving pieces. We actually put an article out on social media yesterday that's been well received as a source of information as to how we got to this point, and kind of use that as an outline to highlight the request that's before us. There is a request for a tax break from the proposed Imagine Theater. It is driven as the rise in construction costs. It is the estimate to construct it has exceeded the estimate that was done at the original outset of the application, and it's a gap that would need to be made up for the benefit of lending. The building has been shrunk in size and scope from what was originally imposed in order to help make up the increased costs as much as possible while still building an appropriately sized facility. There's still a remaining amount that they've asked for so that they can receive the lending needed to purchase to build the facility. This is an abatement. It's a very specific type of abatement. Abatements are normally only given for industrial facilities of some sort, high-tech research development, that kind of thing. But in 2005, the state legislature saw fit to add this tool to the economic development toolbox for specific properties that have been developed or vacated for commercial purposes that are in need of rehabilitation, and that's defined a number of ways. In this case, you have, of course, the site of the old Oasis truck stop that was raised in the early 2000s, and then it has significant improvements were made to the property going back to 2011 timeframe in anticipation of redevelopment as commercial, and has since then only not seen much activity since the Meijer, other than the Taco Bell that's out front. And in that case, because it has been improved for the commercial facility, and there's not been activity, the township can consider designating this for commercial rehabilitation in order to help stimulate that commercial development. And the idea would be that the board has talked about is that by permitting a tax exemption for this site only, just for the movie theater, that the benefit of that would be to see further commercial growth happen around that area. That this would be a stimulus to other commercial growth that would not be considered for an abatement, that would be fully taxed, and that again was also a benefit to the community for commercial services, as well as property tax revenue for services. What needs clarification is what originally was requested was a 10-year abatement. That is the maximum allowed under the statute being applied here. Through a number of conversations, we've figured out that a proper balance would be a 7-year abatement, and instead of the original 10. This is a partial abatement. We have estimated that on an annual basis, Imagine Theater would still pay a property tax bill over $130,000 a year, even with another $67,000 of abatement for taxes that could be exempted. So there still is, it's about a 2-to-1 ratio, that there still is significant property tax revenue that is new taxes that would be to the benefit to all of the taxing units. In particular, the school operating millage and the state education tax are completely exempted by this. Their tax would not be abated at all. They would receive the full benefit of the taxing on that property. I think the process that we're here for tonight is just to establish a district. There are multiple steps to this process that are required. Right now, we're just considering establishment of a district so that an property owner in the district, in this case only the site of the theater, could apply for this type of exemption. The decision tonight would not be to grant that exception. That's not the point we're at. This is to establish a district where it could be allowed in the future. The district, once established by the board, if established by the board, would then go to the county. Livingston County has an opportunity to review that, and they have an opportunity to say yes or no to that district as well, and the Board of Commissioners would make a ruling on that. If those two things happen and the county accepts the district, then the property owner can apply for an exemption on the types of terms that we've been talking about. And then there would be another process there where there is another public hearing where all of the taxing authorities would be notified. And then if an exemption is granted for the 7 years that's being considered, that also goes through a process where it goes to the State Tax Commission. In the state of Michigan, the Tax Commission would render a final decision as to whether the application is approved. So there's many steps. This is the first of at least 2 public hearings where this would be considered. I think that fairly summarizes where we're at in the conversations we've had.
I just have 2 other comments. Has Hartland Township ever had a tax abatement before?
We have had a number of tax abatements in the area of industrial facilities. The old Johnson Controls is the one that comes to mind immediately. And we have, this board has considered a couple of other tax abatements since I've been here that just didn't happen to ever come to fruition, again, for industrial type facilities.
And has the county ever done a tax abatement like this in other communities?
Yes, so this Commercial Rehabilitation District 1 was just recently established in the last year in the city of Howell, and in that case the county did approve of it as well, or accepted the district. And another thing that was noted, and I think it's within the nature of the board's conversation, is that really the interest to stimulate the commercial growth in the area is somewhat particular to the use. There's certainly a lot of residents who are excited and interested to see this use come. It's also a significant investment. The $15 million proposal is one of the largest single investments in our community that we can think of, other than a school building. That this would be a significant, more so than Meijer or Walmart or any of those, and that was another piece of the conversation.
Any other questions for James before we open the public hearing?
I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but I know the applicants are here. Perhaps if they have anything they could add before the general public asks questions, it might.
We do. We have the applicant here from Imagine is here, along with the developer from Ramco. If you have any questions or comments or anything at this point. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Paul Glantz. I reside at 303 Graywoods Lane, Lake Angeles, Michigan. No, candidly, I think that Mr. James Wickham has done a wonderful job of summarizing where we are to just perhaps edify the public a bit more. We've been working very diligently to move forward with this project, but candidly, as we had established and were developing plans, we found that the cost, the overall budget, was in excess of what we thought could be supported based on our estimate of patronage. And so we've gone back, we've value engineered the structure, we've reduced the overall initial size of the building with the option of expanding it in the future. We've not taken away in any way, shape, or form the aesthetic beauty of the building, either inside or outside, but we have a gap that we're trying to fill, and we're quite appreciative, in fact, very much appreciative of the board's consideration in establishing the district and ultimately considering our application. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, if there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Support. Motion by Trustee Harper, second by Trustee Germain. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. We are open for our public hearing, and the rules are pretty simple. Come forward, please state your name for us, and we'll give everybody 3 minutes. And if it goes rather quick, we can maybe ask for some additional time if need be. If somebody has already asked your question, if you would just, we're taking notes here, and we're listening to everybody's comments. So if we've heard it once, and this Stu is in your wheelhouse to have that discussion, if you have another question that's pertinent as well, just in respect for everybody's time. So with that, if you just raise your hand, and I'll randomly call people up who might have a question. Comments? Yes, sir. Sorry.
Section 5. And thank you for sending me these extensive analysis papers of the project. The word The number 15 million was mentioned. I don't see it on here. Don't know what happened. Was reduced? I see true cash value here of $6.2 million, and this is the new improvements, excluding land and personal property. So maybe the land and personal property made the difference?
Well, just for those who are in the audience, what Mr. Olford has in front of him is a spreadsheet that James and our staff put together, looking at all the different tax entities, looking at the original. And James, I should have you explain this since you spent the hours on this, but just briefly explain what Stu's looking at and where the numbers kind of fall in, because I'm sure you know that spreadsheet way better than I do. Thank you.
It also is this is an opportunity. They can ask questions, but the board does not.
Great. I just wanted.
That.
Yeah, we're not going to maybe necessarily answer all the questions tonight, but since you have, for the benefit of everybody else.
I'd like an answer. It doesn't have to be right now.
Yeah, but at the end of the day,
maybe you might want to adjust this.
All I'm suggesting is that James can at least explain to everybody else that's here what you're looking at, because I don't think that's accessible. We didn't have copies of that for this evening.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly. So we did create a pretty massive spreadsheet to try to make sure we were accurately estimating what would be the impact of the abatement, as well as the new revenue that would be generated by it, not only for us, but for all the other taxing authorities. And that is something we've shared with those. The taxable value number you see on there is, the 6.2 you referred to, is only on the piece that does not include personal property or the land itself, so you would add to that. And what is very common is that, and I'm sure you're familiar with this, because it would be the case in Meijer or Walmart and other cases, the cost of building the building and then what is ultimately the assessed value of it for taxation purposes are often different. In this case, $15 million to build the building, when it's all said and done, how much that could be sold for on the market would be a lesser number than that, and that's very common in these sizes of developments. So the estimation that the assessor did based on industry.
So none of these figures were furnished by the developer?
No, these were estimates that we did with our assessor.
Okay. The land value, is that what he's paying for the land?
For the purposes of this, it's only the estimate of what the taxable value would be for taxation purposes. We didn't.
Well, I'm going back to residential now. Usually when somebody buys something, the deed's recorded, the true value's put on the deed, and usually they take half of that, and that's your assessed value, isn't it?
In theory, it would look like that. I don't know that I've ever seen that happen.
Commercial.
I've not necessarily seen that in residential either.
Well, I've seen it quite a few times, but so the numbers were fabricated by you and not the developer.
I don't know that fabricated is a fair word there.
Okay, the numbers were, okay, that's probably not right. The numbers were at least estimated.
We estimated them internally with our assessor and looking at comparable data for that assessors would look like and do an evaluation.
Okay, that was one question. Future increases to the size of the theater, would that also fall under the abatement if they were going to add on to it later?
For the benefit of the board, that is a good question. We've not talked about that. The answer to that would be yes. What essentially happens with a commercial rehabilitation exemption is that the value of any building that's there at the time the exemption is granted, in this case no building, is frozen, and then anything new built after that would then be exempted. So if there is an addition put onto it, it would be It would not be exempt from the school tax as we discussed, but it would be exempt from the other taxes. That's accurate.
Okay. I just wanted to point that out, and
So only during the 7-year period.
Only during the abatement.
right.
Yeah.
In other words, if he did it at 6 years from now, you'd only have
1 year.
1 year.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. It wouldn't extend 7 for that.
No.
Okay. Was there a reason not to apply for the entire parcel to try and get that thing going?
And I don't, maybe if you summarize your questions, I don't know how much questions
I'm
we want
talking
to
about
try
the
to answer.
entire vacant parcel.
Sure.
Obviously, did the developer, Gershenson, ask for that?
No, the developer has asked that is just the opposite. They've not asked for this to be considered anywhere else on the development.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name's Glenn Wilkinson. I live at 11070 Dunham Road right here in Hartland, and you each received a letter from me with a number of questions concerning the project. And I guess at first of all, I'd like to thank, I think the Imagine Theater could be a good use for the property planned. My biggest concern as far as the facility itself is the traffic, and everyone will tell you it is a dangerous nightmare now and anywhere along the M59 area. I want to thank Bill Fountain for meeting with me and Mr. Olford to give us some insight about the township, how the township might be looking at the proposed Imagine Theater site. As you all know, the movie theater business has been dying for years. This is the reason serving alcohol, state-of-the-art lounge chairs, gourmet meals are being added and installed in theaters to try to regain attendance. After reviewing everything about the proposal and the applicant, I am strongly opposed to the granting of any tax abatement. It might be a little premature to say that when you're just considering the district, but I am opposed to any tax abatement for the Imagine Theater property. Like I said, you each received my letter, and I have a few additional questions to the letter I sent to all of you that were not directly answered in any way in the original letter. I would still like answers to those questions. My additional questions are, and I know you won't answer them here or don't expect you to because this isn't a meeting for that purpose, but it might give you something to think about. First of all, do you have any idea who you're dealing with? The finances of the company and the people you are dealing with. It looks like the applicant has totally outsmarted the township in a manner to gain a $500,000 tax abatement. If you had any idea who you are dealing with, I think you would laugh at the thought of a request of any kind of abatement. I know I did. 30 years ago, the township required adequate proof of financing as part of the original applicant from any development. And it looks like that doesn't happen and hasn't happened for years anymore. What is this is a question I don't expect an answer on, that is the value of the liquor license for a business like this. In some areas, municipalities are asking $20,000 to $65,000 for licenses from applicants. I know there are public hearings for issuing of the license according to your ordinance, and I don't like the idea of alcohol in theaters. There are enough problems with drunk drivers already. But actual hardship, do you or the applicant state for the need for an abatement? Apparently no hardship is even required. It looks like if you don't grant a $500,000 abatement to a multi-million-dollar company claiming a $15 million investment, they claim they cannot get financing to afford the project. 3% of the total
is all the $500,000 is. If that's all it takes to make or break a deal, this looks like a joke to me. Why would a multi-million-dollar business need a mere $500,000 abatement to make their $15 million plan workable? It almost looks like this might be a con job just to get $500,000 from the township, plus a free liquor license, where there's absolutely no need by the applicant for such an abatement to afford this project. I can't blame them for trying. I understand multiple variances have already been granted. It looks like they're going to get a free liquor license and a $500,000 handout. What more could they possibly get from the township and the township taxpayers? Any small business would be shocked to be treated in this manner. To finalize, it just doesn't make sense to give a $500,000 abatement to a multi-million-dollar corporation. And do you have any idea who you're dealing with, the people and their finances? I mean, I have all the records of the person involved. They're head of huge financial organizations, and it just seems ludicrous to even consider it or waste your time planning a district and thinking about an abatement. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Kuhn?
Doug Kuhn again. I'm still at the same address. Mr. Wilkinson, Mr. Olford have done a good job with their questions tonight. I would like to ask what the yellow outline is on your air photo here.
That's the existing parcel that would be divided for the theater, for that Ramco owns.
Okay, is that then the parcel that would receive?
No, just the red outline where the proposed theater is just the 7.5 acre district.
Okay. Mention was made that the parcel qualifies because the Oasis used to be on that site. However, the whole site has been redeveloped. The Oasis is long gone. It's basically a new site now. I don't believe it qualifies for tax abatement. Secondly, I don't want to get into repetitive mode here, but what Mr. Wilkinson pointed out with theaters is absolutely true. Fenton has a theater. It's been vacant for a number of years now because of lack of customers. The way the internet is going with Hulu and movies on demand, theaters are going to continue to have a very rough future. I think their future is limited. People are putting in home entertainment systems with surround sound, big screen TVs, watch any movie they want. A ticket to a theater today is going to cost you $20 or more by the time you get your ticket and your popcorn and something to drink. Could be much more than that if alcohol is involved in food. People will stay home because that $25 gets them a month of online movies every night. So the economics of it just are not there. And as Glenn said, these people have deep pockets to begin with. They don't need this abatement. And once you do this, it sets a precedent. We already chased out or turned down or lost, however you want to describe it, a major retailer 3 times. They never asked for an abatement. Of course, they're now doing business in Wixom, and they're getting the money down there. So I don't think it's necessary. We don't have to go begging for opportunities here. We certainly don't need to give out abatements for any of these businesses. As the economy picks up, they will move in. We've already had applicants, and we'll have more. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may, if somebody else wants to step up, just a couple of points that can clarify for everybody's benefit. One, the technical reason the property qualifies, it's correct to say it's not because the Oasis was there. I'm just trying to offer historical, for everybody's benefit, that it was there. The technical reason was qualified because of the improvements that have been made in anticipation of commercial development that has not happened. That's the technical piece that makes it a commercial rehabilitation. The Oasis would not make it part of that. The second point, just to clarify, for what it's worth, the $500,000 number is a number on paper as far as the savings, the gap on the pro forma for lending. The actual amount of the abatement over the 7 years for all of the taxing units that we've estimated would total $438,764. So it's a bit, about 10-15% short of that $500,000 number. It's still a significant amount of money, but for anybody who's interested in what the actual estimate is.
Thank you. No seconds yet. Yes, sir. Good evening.
Bob Conaway, 8425 Parshallville Road, Parshallville. I have a different slant on this. Since we have some young people here, I think they ought to perk up their ears. Of an abatement, as I understand what's going on, is the taxpayers are going to be helping to subsidize the building of this movie theater over that period. And the applicant is not going to be paying taxes, but the workers that work at that movie theater are going to be paying taxes, and their parents are going to be paying taxes for fire and all the other things that we just had a special millage for roads. They're not going to be contributing to that, I doubt. And I don't know if the applicant is paying a living wage to its current people that work at their Imagine theaters. I imagine they're probably paying $8 an hour with no benefits. So these young people ought to pay attention to this, because what benefit are we going to get out if our taxpayers are going to be subsidizing their access to our entertainment market here? What is Hartland Township going to get out? Are we going to get a non-motorized pathway from Hartland to the village of Parshville or something that we benefit from, or are we just going to be helping them get access to an entertainment market, which I think you need to be aware of, that you just had a workshop on urban systems and the demographics of this area, and young people are leaving this area. We're becoming a senior citizen haven. I'm not sure many of the young people here are going to be here after they graduate from high school or college, but they are going to be doing entry-level jobs in this business as well as the other entry-level jobs, and they're making minimum wage with no benefits. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that that's another aspect that I think should be considered. Thank you.
Thank you. And Manager Wickman, again, if you could, in a nutshell, try to explain what's abated and what that difference is, that there will be, for instance, if it was to stay fallow, it'd be at X amount, and what this would bring in additional taxes to our community.
Yes, the land itself will continue to be taxed like any other property in the township. And when the building's done, and when the land is divided, and when the building's done, the value of that land for taxation purposes not only on caps, but it goes up. So that will have an increase in property tax revenue, an albeit small one comparatively what we're talking about. The personal property, which is the equipment installed inside, particularly you're talking over $2 million worth in something like this, of all that audio-visual equipment, concession equipment, that kind of thing. All of that is taxed exactly like other properties taxed. So that would all be new property on the tax roll for tax purposes. And then the building itself, the only thing that's abated is the building itself from most of the taxes except for the school operating tax and the state education tax. Again, the estimate is that they would still pay a property tax bill of over $130,000 a year, and the abatement about would be another $67,000 above and beyond that they would normally have otherwise paid. So there's still quite a bit. There's new revenue for all the taxing authorities, just not the full amount.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Kate DeRosier, and I am at 10484 North Valley Court, kind of behind you. I'm here as a resident, speaking for myself. I serve on some boards, but I'm just here for myself. I had a question, and I appreciate all the explaining because it is a complicated matter. The $130,000 that is, I think we're talking about, or you had mentioned, James, that's for the personal property? Is that roughly what we're talking about? The gain would be is the personal property tax?
About $35,000 of that is related to the personal property tax.
Okay.
About $11,000 is for the land, and then about another $88,000 of that is for the building itself for the non-abated portions.
Okay. Because I did have a question about how depreciation fits in there over the course, and you no doubt have already considered that. So I just wanted to ask if that was in that figure. So that's great. I'm not opposed to the theater per se, and I wish them well. That's not why I'm here. But I do have some concerns to sort of tag on to an earlier remark made by a gentleman. The business model itself, and like I said, I wish them well. But if over the course of the 7 years, if it is not successful, then we have a property that will be poses another problem. And I guess I just look and I wonder the model itself, what the projections are for how successful it is, and if it isn't, we're going to have a lot of parking spaces in a giant building empty if it fails. And I guess that's just a concern that I have. And I agree that I think the model of the theater is a very challenging one. I don't have a crystal ball, but that concerns me. And so for that purpose, I don't really support an abatement. I wish the business well, and I appreciate having this hearing. And the other thing I wanted to know is, let's say it goes along, and in the 7-year period, there's a change of hands. Does that abatement continue? Is it transferable to new owners because it goes with the actual business, or how does that function?
So that is a good question. Now, if the ownership changes, the abatement does not go with it. The new owner under the statute can apply to the board and request that the board approve a transfer of that abatement for the remaining term, and it would be up to the board to decide to allow that or not.
Thank you for explaining it, and thank you for your time.
Yep. Thank you. I'll let you get back up.
Wait,
yes, sir. Gentleman over here in the tiger T-shirt.
Yeah. Good evening. My name is Tracy Tomlins. I'm from 2739 Ore Valley Drive right here in Hartland. Just hearing everybody talk, again, I've been here since June 2009, moved here from D.C., and there's buildings that's been vacant the whole time I've been here. I've lived here. My concern is, like everybody else, if this doesn't go well, we have another empty building on our hands that we need to try to figure out what to do with. We had Walmart close on us. We have that one there halfway filled now, but it's still the other half is empty. So just concerned, we're going to get more and more empty buildings. That's one point to make. Secondly, if we allow tax abatement now, and I understand it's going to be the red shaded area, then any new business coming in, I think we set the standard where they can all apply for the same thing. Use whatever justification they want or, excuses, but if we set that precedent now, that's a big vacant lot. I don't know how many more business can go in there, but if they go in, that's the opportunity for each one of those to apply for that same privilege. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm just saying that once we set that, then everybody can say that's a good course we can do. That's just all I want to say.
Thank you. Good evening.
My name is, Wes Nakagiri from here right in Hartland on Tipsico Lake Road. I wanted to start by saying thank you to Mr. Wickman. We had a nice conversation this morning. He filled me in on a lot of the details that I wasn't aware of. But as I mentioned to Mr. Wickman, I am opposed to what I would characterize as corporate welfare. And the use of the Commercial Rehabilitation Act, in my view, was not intended. Obviously you can do what you're doing. I've read the statute. I see what, that everything you're doing is, within the law. But the intent of that was to rehabilitate urban areas. That's, my opinion on what it was there for. So to allow it to be used to rehabilitate, well, it's really not rehabilitation. It's taking a vacant property and starting from fresh. Whereas, if you look at what it was intended in Summit Place Mall in Waterford, was one of the primary, I'll say, beneficiaries of the act. That was an urban area. They wanted money to revitalize the mall, but in fact they got the money, but they're gone belly up already. So I'm concerned that if we give subsidies to a business that is marginal, and they've said, well, we don't know that we can make this viable. I don't know that that's the right thing to do. If you want tax subsidies in Livingston County, which has one of the lowest, if probably not the lowest, property taxes in Michigan, and you're saying you can't make it work without subsidies in the lowest tax, one of the lowest tax counties, I find that a weak argument that the business is going to thrive. I've also done some research, and it was pointed out to me by some of my friends that also confirmed it. The company, Imagine Theaters, has used this ploy, I'll call it a ploy, of starting a project and then coming to the municipality saying, I need tax abatements. They did it in Saline, they did it in Roseville, they did it in Royal Oak, and now they're doing it here, saying, I can't make this work, like I said, in one of the lowest tax environments. If you look back on the history, just recent history, Michigan's been very favorable to businesses as far as cutting business taxes. They got rid of the MBT, the Michigan business tax. So the need for the tax abatement, I question. The gentleman that owns Imagine Theaters is a seasoned financial veteran. He is a CFO, or was a CFO of a financial type organization. I think Proctor is the name. So I don't see this as something that, they at the last minute they found out that, hey, we're short on money. I think it's a deliberate attempt to, I'll say, leverage us for a tax abatement. And I don't think that's right. And I just appreciate the opportunity to share my, to share my opinion with you. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else this evening before I go back to? Yes, sir. Good evening.
I'm back. I've seen you guys all before. Glenn Flewelling, 1510 Andover. So I live in town. James, you can help us with that. How much money does that generate right now having nothing there? Does that help our fire department, our police department, all that stuff?
The existing parcel, if it stayed vacant, is estimated to pay about $16,000 in taxes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And how long has it been vacant since Oasis left?
Early 2000s, yeah.
Right. Okay. So regardless of the reasoning, why they want the abatement, why they don't, I think we're foolish if anyone wants to spend 15 or 16 million in our town. We don't think that's a good idea. I mean, obviously, he's going to pay a lot more taxes than we're ever going to get keeping this all weeds. So we should think about that. Police, fire, emergency responders, right? So that's all I want to say.
Thank you. Anybody else this evening? We go back to Mr. Wilkinson.
I'll try to make this fairly quick. Bob Conway mentioned something about the wages that this facility may pay. I have the documentation from them, from their website. It's $6 plus $8 to $10 an hour for most of the employees, other than two salary positions of manager and assistant manager. I also have documentation about Bug Lance through Imagine Entertainment Incorporated, and information that tells about his position as current position, president and CEO of, where do we have it? Proctor Corporation, or Proctor Financial Institution. I have these documents I can give you if you'd like.
Thank you.
I have 6 copies.
Okay.
I have it.
Yeah. The other thing I forgot to mention earlier was related to the liquor license. To me, it's not a viable project at all without the liquor license. And to me, they should be paying the township $400,000 for the liquor license to put in a $15 million facility. So it's a wash, I would say, as far as what they expect and what they expect you to give them. They're getting a lot better deal between a liquor license and a tax abatement, both. If it goes through that way, then the 3% of the $15 million is, like I said, a drop in the bucket to a corporation like the information I gave you. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else want to talk again? And hopefully, if you come up for a second time, it's something we haven't already spoke about. So that's all I ask. Just a short one. Okay. Thank you.
On the issue, how do we benefit? I just found out what the hourly wage is. I wasn't surprised, but it would be nice that we would benefit the students if they had scholarships to college for their employees as an offering besides the $8 an hour or whatever their minimum wage are paying, and some kind of health benefit or something like that. That's the kind of benefit that we would get, because all these kids that graduate from high school are looking for entry-level jobs, and they're going to be coming to institutions like this. So if we're looking for benefits, that should be on the table too, if they want to do something for us when they're asking us to subsidize their project.
Thank you. Mr. Cohn?
Two items that came up here in this first round. Mr. Flewellen brought up the subject of the fact that the owner is currently paying about $16,000 a year in property tax, and even with the abatement, they would generate about $130,000. Now's the time to remind the board and everybody else that numerous studies have been done that prove that vacant land, open land, does not require much, if anything, in the way of services. So the $16,000 that you get currently from that open land requires basically nothing. As soon as a structure goes in, especially a public structure like the theater, that could significantly increase the cost for fire, police, road maintenance, and so forth. So the $130,000 you get out of there is greatly depleted just for the requirement for additional services. In fact, the services may even cost more than what they're paying. Secondly, the issue with the liquor license, I think as all you know, and just so the audience know, that is a bearer instrument. So if you give them a liquor license, give it to them or sell it to them or whatever, they are free to, that is their possession. They can take that anywhere in the state of Michigan and open up a business with liquor. It's transportable. So they can get a tax abatement, they can get a liquor license. In 5 years, they can close up, take a write-off, and away they go with the liquor license. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Is this is stacked in their favor, believe me, not the townships. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else this evening for our public hearing? I don't see anybody else. I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Trustee Germain, second by Trustee Petrucci. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. All right, let me get my reading glasses on. Well, we've had the public hearing, and there is a resolution, if depending on how the board's wishes are this evening, to establish a commercial rehabilitation district. And again, Manager Wickman, it would go, if we did act on this evening, it would then go to the county.
Yes.
And this is just establishing the district itself. The county has 28 days to respond. Then there will be a second public hearing sometime after that that would establish, if there was to be an abatement, what that may look like. And then that goes to the State of Michigan Tax?
State Tax
Commission. Okay. So what's that?
I have another question.
Go ahead.
Part of the process is determining how many, there's a report that's generated in terms of jobs and things like that, correct? Could you go into that a little bit more?
Yeah, two things that might help. First, if we do it, it would be our practice to enter into a tax abatement agreement between the township and the property owner, where certain terms that this board has also talked about, including if those terms aren't met, that the abatement is revoked going forward. Those requirements would also include the requirement that the state has that all of the jobs that are created would have to be reported on, so they would have to provide a report to the township reporting how many jobs, the wages, the number of hours for those jobs. That's a report we would also have to send to the state of Michigan. So there's a couple of pieces, and then there's a standard agreements that all the taxes and fees would be paid on the property. They wouldn't go into default. Is that
correct? I think that's important. The other aspect of this, I think it needs to be emphasized, is this is not relieving the applicant, if it is approved, of the school taxes for building and so forth. Those are exempt from, or not exempt, that's not the right word, but they're not exempt from this particular district, correct?
The school operating tax and state education tax are not touched. The school debt millage and the school sinking fund millage that just passed would be abated, and as well as the LESA, Intermediate School District, would be abated. To further clarify that, yeah.
You have a question? Anybody else have a question for James? Again, what's our next on our agenda, and it would be a resolution to establish a commercial rehabilitation district, and there is no financial impact for establishing a commercial rehabilitation district. Certain new property tax revenue within the district could be abated in the future only if a commercial rehabilitation tax exemption is granted to the applicant in the future.
I'll move the resolution to establish a commercial rehabilitation district.
I'll second.
Motion by Trustee Harper, second by Treasurer Horning. Is there any other discussion? Being none, I'll have the clerk please call the roll.
Trustee Collier?
Yes.
Trustee Petrucci?
Yes.
Treasurer Horning?
Yes.
Clerk Chokyu? Yes. Trustee Germain?
No.
Trustee Harper?
Yes.
And Supervisor Fallon?
Yes. Thank you. Next item on our agenda this evening is pending and new business, land division, SAD allocations from Ramco Gershenson. James?
Yes, normally land division would be handled under the ordinance administratively, but for the special assessment balances that are on those properties. This split of the 7.5 acres does have a number of SADs. The board does have to approve the allocation of those to the new parcels. And of course, the reason for that is to make sure that we're not overloading assessments on a parcel beyond its value. We've looked at that and we find it acceptable to approve that.
I'll move to approve the proposed special assessment district allocations contingent upon the approved land division of parcel 470821400073 as presented.
I'll support it.
Motion by Trustee Kalani, second by Trustee Petrucci. Is there any discussion? This is just a regular motion, isn't it? There's no other...
The effect of this, approving this motion is to?
So to allow them to go forward with the land division that's been applied for to split off the 7.5 acres from the yellow parcel, and then the special assessments for water, sewer, the Hartland Road and M59 assessments would be distributed amongst those new parcels.
So at this point, we don't know how many REUs they would be using and those types of things?
We do know the number of REUs. Well, actually, we'll have to recalculate it based on the new square footage. But as part of this, the developer is not transferring REUs to the new child parcel. This development will have to buy their own REUs.
Okay.
And for what it's worth, the two road SADs would actually be paid off at closing for this parcel.
Any other questions? Being none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. This is a special meeting. Usually we go into board reports, but we don't have, unless anybody has anything they want to mention this evening.
Just a reminder about the Teen Center golf outing scheduled for July 16th, Sunday, July 16th in the afternoons. We'd like to see as many participants come out to the Teen Center golf outing held at the Majestic Golf Course. It'll be about 1 o'clock. 9-hole golf course outing.
Thank you. Did you have something, Matt?
Yeah, real quickly, I wanted to update the board and the general public about the what was formerly known as the Hartland 36 gas plant. The responsible party is Merit Energy Company, and they have initiated this month a pilot test for groundwater remediation. The pilot test has been successful. It's been operating now for about 2 weeks. Showed that they got good rates of influence from the injection wells, a good dissolved oxygen transfer at the monitoring points. And so as a result of that, they're going to allow the system to continue to operate for an extended period of time as a pilot test so they can gain additional information. Also, because the investigation itself is completed, the plume is defined vertically and horizontally. It's still within the 5-acre parcel where the plant used to be. But we're anticipating that the consultant working for Merit Energy will be completing a very thorough investigation report probably in the next 30 days. And when that's completed, following previous protocol, they will provide a copy to the township, and we will likely post it on our website. So just a quick update.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any other board members have anything this evening? Well, let's move on to, we had one other item this evening. We wanted to...
Yeah, if it pleases the board, we did add it to take advantage of our time together. If you want to take a recess and go into work session on that, that'd be it.
So we'll take a 5-minute recess, and then we'll move over here, and you can put it up on the screen over there, James?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for all coming tonight. You can stick around and listen to us talk about capital improvements if you'd like. We're going to take a brief recess, and then we convene over there because it's a little bit less formal.